Welcome back to the Real Estate 401k Show. I'm your host, Mike Weinstein, alongside Justin Frederick and Ryan Gerdes. You're going to want to text the word credit to 623AZ-RECON. Go ahead and just do it now. Get it over with. Text the word credit to 623AZ-RECON because you're going to want to get a hold of this piece of paper right here, the do's and don'ts when applying for a mortgage. And what's really nice about this, it's got my picture on it. Good job, Justin, customizing that. Ryan's like, what the hell?
I didn't do that.
He just
to let you guys know.
So interesting question. We have a buyer in escrow. We're getting ready to close on their house, and they're going through the process of getting all the utilities set up. So he reaches out to Ryan and I and says, okay, I want to get water. They're going to charge me a $200 deposit. However, if I let them do a soft credit pool, there'll be no deposit. And good on this buyer for just conferring with us before doing anything with his credit report. And the question was, if I have them do this soft credit pool, will it hurt my the escrow process, the lending process? And of course, the answer to the question is, Justin,
go ahead and have it pooled as a soft pool. Absolutely.
What's the difference between a soft pool and a hard pool?
A hard inquiry is going to actually show the inquiry on your credit report. And that triggers us to ask questions and show proof of no new accounts taken. But really, we have that there in case somebody's trying to finance this through another lender or buys a car or gets a new credit card. And we have to account for all that in our debt-to-income ratios. Now, also a hard inquiry can have an impact on what your credit scores are. So we have to make sure the qualifying scores are still going to meet our needs as far as the investors go. So I'm super happy they read this because we send this out to every buyer right after we start the process. But I'm happy they called.
I am too. I mean, and if you talk to any real estate agent in the country that's been in the business and has done a sizable amount of transactions, they will all have horror stories of what buyers do between signing and executing the purchase contract and the actual close of escrow. I remember this is prior to me even knowing you, Justin. I had a buyer. She had a lender. It was one of those tough ones. You talk about pulling rabbits out of the hat and miracles out of the sky just to get her qualified into the closing table. So we got her under contract. Everything is going good. 3 days prior to the close of escrow, this is a grown man. This loan officer called me. He's a grown man, and he's in tears. I'm like, dude, what's up? He goes, she didn't think that we were going to check, and she decided not to pay her last auto payment, car loan payment, and the deal
imploded.
Done. So let's walk through. More importantly, what are some of the things you're under escrow now? You're trying to get to the finish line. What are the things, the common things that we are seeing buyers do that jeopardize their loan and things to stay away from?
So one of the biggest deal killers that we've seen, and we've seen this multiple times, is don't quit your job. Don't put a 2-week notice in because we have to call and do another verification of employment within 3 days of the close of escrow. And so we're verifying that the likelihood of employment is going to continue. So if you're like, no big deal, I'm going to put my 2 weeks in a week before I close, and then I'll close and I'll only be employed there for another week. Well, your likelihood of continuance on that job is gone because they've received notice. So although you're still employed there, it doesn't matter. So do not quit your job. Do not change employment unless we talk about that and we figure that out along the way. It is possible, but we need to know what we have to put in place, offer letters and things like that. Another big one is we've had people get new bank accounts or close out bank accounts, and they're not able to get us the statements to do the trail of where that asset money is coming from. And because lending is one of those areas where we've had a lot of fraudulent money moving, laundering, we have to make a paper trail on where all that money goes and comes from. So that's another big one.
All right, if you would like some more information about your credit, qualifying for a home, or more importantly, get one of these fancy flyers, Justin's do's and don'ts when applying for a mortgage that has my picture on it, go ahead and text the word credit to 623-AZ-RECON. That's credit to 623-AZ-RECON. Ryan, you and I have been in the business just about the same amount of time, and I know you've seen some crazy shit.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen someone go and blow their whole down payment in Vegas.
I've seen the same thing.
Yeah,
I've seen that twice. I think.
And then they come to me and say, "Well, I can back out of this thing and get my earnest money back, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't really work like that." Now, if there's something that's involuntary and or an act of God or something where there's a legitimate life change, I mean, okay. I know that there's ways out. I understand that the residential purchase contract is written for buyers and not for sellers. But, in situations like that, I was like, look, dude, you made your bed. You're going to need to rob Peter, pay Paul, whatever, in order to figure that out. Seen that. But even on the more, like the side where it's like I had a buddy. And he's like, man, I got an offer from one of our competing companies that I couldn't refuse. Same line of work and everything. And they were going to pay him damn near twice what he was getting paid at his other company. And they basically said, this offer's on the table. You have 1 week. And we were closing in 2. And I'm like, well, they need to see some paycheck stubs from the new company before they're going to close on this thing, because the way that they were writing the contracts wasn't going to satisfy the loan conditions. And so it's like, hey, do you want the job or do you want the house? So there was that, and that's not as nefarious as going and blowing your down payment in Vegas, but I've definitely seen that. Kind of going through a number of these different things, and usually it has to do with, from what I've seen, less about employment and more about moving money around and doing different credit checks. I mean, I get it. You're getting ready to buy this house. You're putting down a bunch of money, especially if you haven't done very many of these transactions, and you're kind of on somewhat of a shoestring budget, and you need a refrigerator, washer, and dryer because the house doesn't come with it. So what do? You go over to Spencer's or you go over to Best Buy or whatever your favorite store is, and then you ask for a credit card, and then now all of a sudden
you get there at 0%, and they're like, yeah.
Don't start buying your furniture until you get the keys to the house. I've seen people go out there and open up a credit line with a furniture company, $5,000 worth of furniture, because they're moving in 2 weeks and they want that moving truck to be there, and then their debt to income ratio is already so narrow that new $5,000 credit line blows it out the door.
Yeah. And I mean, in some people's cases, it doesn't matter, but you got to have the conversation with the lender up front before you make any of those decisions. Even if you're in line at the store to buy furniture or buy that refrigerator, in some people's cases, no big deal, buy it. This is what I'm going to need. Okay, we can make that work. But in a lot of people, and it is extra work, so just keep that in mind. But in a lot of people's cases, yeah, we're pushing those debt to income ratios. I had a person that we were maxed out on debt to income ratio and went out and bought a Corvette. Bought a Corvette.
Must have been a middle-aged white guy, right?
What are we doing here? We were fighting for this approval. We were knowing we were having to pay off debt, and you went out and bought a Corvette? Wow.
Well, I want to let's talk about a little bit, Justin, what happens during the escrow period. Because, all right, so Ryan and I, we're flying out to D.C. This weekend. We got a great friend of ours that we met at Luke Air Force Base getting promoted to colonel, and we're going to get to participate in that. And we had to apply to be able to get access into the Pentagon because this is where the ceremony is going to be. And I got my email from the Pentagon basically saying my application's been approved.
They're letting you in?
Whoa. I know. I'm like, that's the thing. I'm like, well, I dodged that bullet, right?
Dude.
And I think for a lot of people, they get pre-qualified, they get under contract. They're like, okay, I dodged that bullet. Right now I'm current on auto pay or car loan payments, and my credit checked out good, and my employment checked out good.
It feels good.
But there's a lot of stuff a lot of re-verification that goes through during the escrow period.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people confuse pre-qualification for approval. They don't quite understand the difference, but an underwriter is the only one that can stamp that approval. And even your initial approvals are conditional approvals. So until you actually get the keys in your hand, you got to know that there's all kinds of stuff that's going through, like you said, verifications and re-verifications by the time we get to that closing table.
Yeah, and I speaking of flying away, if you're in the middle of escrow, don't plan any big vacations.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, because what happens, especially if you are going towards a new month and they see some irregularity in your spending, I think we did one, and my dad gave me like $100 for my birthday or something like that, and I had to go put together this big old long letter of explanation. Where's this $100 coming from? Just from like a Zelle account, and I'm like, stop it!
I love the fact that your daddy's still giving you money.
Yeah, I know.
For your birthday. You're a grown ass man,
I
bro.
know. It's funny. We sit down for a $400 dinner, and but moral of the story is whenever there's some type of irregularity with how you're doing your spending, if it's going to get on a document, you're going to have to answer some questions. Now, more often than not, it's something that's easy to navigate. But if it's something big, or if you are getting a gift from a family member to help out with your down payment, they can't just go over there, hand you a stack of $100 bills and say, hey, spend it wisely. It has to go through certain protocol in order for not only any lending institution, but for old Uncle Sam and the Patriot Act. They want to make sure that it's not going towards funding anything that could be national security, like letting Mike Weinstein into the Pentagon.
Boy, wow. They got a thing coming. All right, if you'd like some more information about the qualifying process, your credit report, or to get a copy of Justin's helpful do's and don'ts when applying for a mortgage, all you got to do is text the word credit to 623-AZ-RECON. That's credit to 623-AZ-RECON. Ryan, this is just a kind of a side note. You'd mentioned, going on vacation. If you are buying a house, let your agent know if you're planning on going out of the country. We were in escrow. I can't remember what client it was.
Happens all the time, too.
And we were under contract, and about 2 weeks in, we were getting ready, amping everything up, and he goes, is it going to be a problem I'm going to be out of the country on the close of escrow? I'm like,
maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
maybe. I wish I would have known that information, but let's go through some of the do's.
So, first of all, tell us everything that we're asking, because there's all kinds of.
You're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out. We have all kinds of ways to figure things out.
I lie to my doctor all the time, and it's so stupid. My doctor's there to help me,
right?
And I lie to him. He finds out. He knows how I'm eating, and he knows how much I'm drinking. They know.
We dig all this information up, so you have to tell us the full story. Now, with the full story, we can determine how we can go about it. But if we don't have the full story, we're not going to be able to get to the finish line. We've been doing this a long time. We know how to play these, but we need to have the full story. So that's a big do. Another do is make sure that the money for your escrow is coming from your account. That's the escrow deposit that you're putting down to make your contract finalized, and you start the escrow process. So make sure that earnest deposit is coming from your account, because we're going to have to trace that. If you're selling a house, make sure that we know that you're selling a house. We're going to need to have the contract on the sale of your house. We're going to need to get the final settlement statement before we can fund the loan, because that's where our funds for down payment are coming from. If you are, again, you were talking about gift funds. If you're planning on getting gift funds, or if there's even a hint of a chance of getting gift funds from anybody. Let us know up front. We can tell you exactly how to play that. We don't want those funds coming into your account, because then we're going to have to get the account statement of the individual that's giving you the funds. Whereas there's ways to use these gift funds without having to bombard the individual giving you this for their personal information. So that's a big deal. If you're getting a raise, promotion, you're transferring jobs within the same company, or even transferring jobs, you got to let us know about that. Sometimes people will take a transfer and they're not letting us know that this job transfer has a reduction in pay. That's a big deal when we're calculating what your debt to income ratio is, and when we're trying to qualify you for a house. Be aware that we will, in some cases, pull a new credit report if we have some triggers to show that we need to get a new credit report, or your credit report expired.
I think, Ryan, the moral of the story is there's, in most scenarios and in most situations, we can work around them and we can adapt and pivot and take care of stuff. When we find these things out at the 11th hour, you got close of escrow in 2 days or close of escrow tomorrow, and now we're finding that you're getting, a gift, financial gift from a relative and so forth. We can overcome a lot of these, but that's why be transparent in the beginning, because sometimes it's too late.
It's a fragile situation. So some of these aren't as clear, but for the most part, to paraphrase, the biggest don't is don't be a dumbass. Okay? like literally, they're going to, anything that affects any of your finances or any of your employment or anything that has to do with credit. So if you have to give them your social security number, don't do it without talking to Justin first, right?
Facts.
If it's going to be something outside of your typical spending habits, just wait until you close, right? Because most of these times, or most of these things, they're not that big a deal, and then you can and you can usually get these other smaller credit lines approved within hours. So if you need that refrigerator, washer, and dryer, guess what? One day, right? Go.
And if your car breaks down, just Uber it for 2 weeks. It's going to be a
Right.
lot better than being homeless.
Not that big of a deal, right?
All right, true story, Justin. I don't know whether you realize this or not, or if I ever told you this, but way back in the day, my wife, Mindy, she was my loan officer.
No way, I didn't know
You
that.
know, yeah,
No.
yeah. We were doing this together, and apparently I'm a real ass to work for, so she didn't last long, right? But I just remember we had this buyer. They were coming from California, buying a nice little house in El Mirage, and 3 days prior to close of escrow, she calls me up. She goes, "Is it a big deal that my husband quit his job?" One of those situations, and this is one of the only times lender did not do a job verification. So it slid by.
Ooh. Hey.
All right, if you like questions, or if you have questions about understanding your credit report, understanding the mortgage qualification process, or wanting to get pre-qualified to see where you stand, or more importantly, get one of these do's and don'ts flyers with my picture on it, all you got to do is text the word credit to 623-AZ-RECON. That's credit to 623-AZ-RECON.